Visions of Greatness is more than a show. It's a journey into the minds and moments that redefine what's possible. I'm Ira Joe Fisher, and this is Visions of Greatness.
Thanks so much, Ira Joe. Welcome to the show. I'm Donnie Teague, and right over there is Brian Kelsey.
What's up, DT? It's good to see you, and I'm really excited because on the show today is the one and only Peter Noone. Now, you have a long history with him. You go way back with him.
I do. I go way back with him. I don't know how many of you viewers tonight know his background, but it's just so impressive. Let me start off by saying that Peter Noone sold more records in 1965 than the Beatles.
I can't even believe that. That's incredible.
Yeah. They sold over 60 million records worldwide, and they had 14 gold single and 7 gold albums.
The Herman's Hermits, yeah.
Herman's Hermits. Yeah, I mean, some of you may remember some of those songs. I'm Into Something Good. Of course, there's Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter, and maybe the most popular one, I'm Henry VIII, or as Peter would say, Henry VIII, I am, which really helped define the British invasion. Peter appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show back then, the Jackie Gleason Show, and he was even on Broadway in the Pirates of Penzance. And, telling you that he appeared on all these shows, he still has a show. He does a show on Sirius Radio. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to it, it's on their 60s on 6 station. It's a great show. And I could go on forever as to Peter's attributes, talents, etc. But once you hear and see the man, you'll know what I'm talking about. So let's get going.
All right, let's bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Peter Noone.
Peter, I just wanted to say how great it is that you were coming on this program with us today. First of all, I always love hanging out with you, and this is really a pleasure. And I think we're going to get some very interesting commentary from you. At least I know from the past what to expect. So here we go. If you could switch places with another person, who would you switch places with?
It's a hard question for me to ask because I'm really very happy in my own skin. But the one thing I regret, that what was the name of that baseball player who refused to play on the Shabbos? I met him once.
Sandy Koufax.
Sandy Koufax, and somebody saw him the other day, and he's still around. And I always remember as a kid, I mean, I wasn't in America at the time, but I remember, wow, that's really good. Some guy who's holding the position. And that impressed me. And I've always been a bit wishy-washy about, I've never committed to stand behind or against something because I'm afraid, like most people nowadays, I'm afraid of taking a position because, my friend was a famous comedian, and he decided to make jokes about the Democrat Party, and he realized halfway through that he'd lost half of his audience. And I've had that feeling all my life that if I take a position for or against something, then you'll lose half of your followers because you can't suppose that everybody's supposed to, one of the biggest mistakes that entertainers make is taking a position and offending half of their following.
So, yeah, you just can't win, So it's like, just stay quiet and smile, and because you inevitably somebody is going to complain. You just can't.
But you wish I was somebody else. I would say I wish I was more like Sandy Koufax, in that I've never seen a baseball game, but he chose a position, and no matter what, he refused to do it. And it's like, and in my history, we did a movie, and it was the Beatles, the Animals, Herman's Hermits, and a guy called Matt Monroe. And there was like a director, an assistant director, and he was telling everybody, during your song, he comes up to Herman's Hermits, and we're like punks. We're all 15, 16 years old. But the Beatles are there, and they're the coolest people on the planet. And he says, during your song, we want you to walk in time around the studio, and I said, "Oh, we're not doing that. We don't do that." I just go like this, and he go, "Well, you've got I'm here. I'm the choreographer." I said, "I don't care. We don't do that. The drummer sits at the drums. I stand at the front like this, and the guitar players do this. We don't walk around. We don't do that." And so we didn't do it. And then the Animals were on, and their song was "The House of the Rising Sun," and he said to them, "Okay, you got to walk around," and they did it. And they did it. And I got, because they didn't know how to say no, you know what I mean? But they did it, and they had this look on their face. There is a house in you. And they walked in time around the studio. And every time I see it, I go, for once I took a position and said, "No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that."
Well, Peter, at what point in your career did you get to that where you could say no? Because in any career, you want to make everyone happy. At what point you were like, we're successful, we can run the show now?
Well, I've never got to that, but I was always a persistent little chip. And I thought that my idea was better than everybody else's. For me and for us, we had the we thing going on in Hermits. So right from the beginning, what happened was I was the youngest person in the band, but I talked them into believing me. They thought, that all my life I've tried to make people think I'm more intelligent and interesting than I really am. And I was like 15, and I saw the Beatles. It's the Beatles. I saw the Beatles playing in a field across the street from my grandmother's. Really, in a field, you had to cross a field to get to another field in the country in England. And the Beatles were on the stage, and I saw them. And the guy with me was the bass player in our little band called the Cyclones. And when the Beatles started to play, he said, "We're expletive. We are." But I didn't. I said, "We're just going to have to rehearse a lot more." And I got home. I went home, and I was living with my grandparents, and they were sitting there. My grandfather was learning to speak Italian, and I'm sitting there. I said, "See, these people concentrate on one thing and get it done. You know what I mean?" I said, "I'm going to find a band, and I'm going to say we can't have jobs. Our job will be musicians. So if you've got a job," I said, "I'm not going to go to school. We're going to rehearse all day." And I found 4 idiots who believed my idea would work. And I always had that sort of, it can be done. I think my dad said to me when I was like 11, he goes, "Well, those boys have got talent. You're going to have to work a lot harder." And it didn't offend me. Oh, well, that's a good idea. I'll just work harder, and then I'll look like I've got talent.
Yes, if you give it all you got, if you act the part, you win.
So I was always like that. It didn't suddenly happen to me that I found, like, from today on, I just knew certain things I would not do. You know what I mean? If Dean Martin suggested something to me, even if I thought it was a bad idea, I would do it. But most of the time, people said, "Do this and don't do this and do this," and I go, "Nah, we," and I'd always use "we" as my cover. We're not that kind of band. We're more like the Sex Pistols than you think, kind of thing. And that, like my new band, I said, they said, "Well, what should we wear on stage?" I said, "Well, you don't want to wear T-shirts and jeans. You don't want to look." I said, "Why don't you look at a couple of album covers from like the Dave Clark Five and the bands from that period, and all wear suits like that, suits and ties and everything, so that when the audience see us, they'll think, oh, British Invasion," and that it's just stupid little things like that. Now we all dress up for shows, because if you've got some guy up there with concertina jeans on and half his arse hanging out of the back, nobody wants to see that.
Well, I think Don does. Don, you would want to see that, right?
Well, I've seen it too many times. I'm not interested anymore.
He lives in Boca Raton. He's seen all of that kind of stuff.
That's exactly right.
Has you've been interviewed so many times over the years? Is there any question that someone that you've always wanted someone to ask you that they never have?
It probably referring to what we just discussed. I wonder why people believe that I'm more intelligent than I really am, just by keeping it going and talking and telling my story, because I'm just the lead singer really in life, and I, I've never been asked this question, but how did I manage to keep under the radar for so long?
What do you mean under the radar?
I'm still able to get on a plane and sit next to somebody and go to dinner at a restaurant, and not everybody like, I don't have that man in the leather coat who is maybe got a weapon underneath his jacket, and I think I learned it from Paul McCartney, who said, early on in you've got to have a life as well as a career. Careers are great things. You've got to put all your time into a career, and how do you but you've got to have a life as well, because when the career gets a bit thick, you've got a life to back you up and act normal. And if you look at how he did it, I mean, he lived in a little farm, and he got married and he had babies, and we didn't see their pictures. They weren't in Life magazine or Us magazine. They were as far away from the Tasmanian family, whatever that's called, the Duke made. What are they called? That family with alien, that all those girls, those big girls, and everything about them is. Huh?
Yeah, you got me on that one too. I think I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, but so I'm the opposite of that, and I, it's like I'm going to lunch today in a little place, like a cafe, and people won't go, oh look, there's Prince Harry, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've always been able to be under the radar, and no one has asked me how did I manage that, and I just answered it. I always decided that I have a life, and when I'm normal, I'm normal. If I can't be on all the time, do you know what I
Yeah, there
mean?
are a lot of entertainers who are that way, who specifically they go out to be out and to be seen, and
You know,
so it's like it's your presence, and if
a
you don't
little,
do that, then you're under the radar.
yeah, and a little story is that I was on. They asked me to be a mentor on American Idol. Remember that wonderful show? It was like a great show, and they said you need to be here at 4 o'clock to do the red carpet. And I said, oh, I don't do the red carpet. He said, what do you mean you don't do the red carpet? I said, well, I've never done it. I said, when I see all that stuff going on with the flash bulbs and everything, I sort of sneak around the side door and get in, because I don't like that. And I bet my wife would like it, because, but I don't like that. So I've never done it. And it's, you're the first person. I've never heard such a thing. You don't do a red carpet. And I said, well, I did one once with Haley Mills at the Coconut Grove in Los Angeles. And I remember Haley Mills was a big star, but I was just like a pop singer, 17-year-old pop singer. And right in front of us was Edward G. Robinson. And I go, well, he's a star. How come they're not taking pictures? That was the only time I ever did it. And then I got to thinking, I go, well, I wonder who else doesn't do a red carpet. Mick Jagger
Really?
Ah,
never did
interesting.
a red carpet. I don't do that. No, not doing it. It's interesting, isn't it?
It
And
is.
he
Yeah.
lived in the same house in Shaney Walk, and off the King's Road in London. Bought the house next door, lived there with his family. Goes in and out, walks up and down the street, puts a hat on, a pair of glasses. You can have a real life, and be the most famous person in the world.
Yeah. Personally, I could vouch for everything he said about that, because I've known him long enough to know that's exactly who Peter Noone is, which is a compliment.
Oh, thank you. I like compliments.
All right, so let me get to my next question here. This is kind of
All
interesting
right.
because it fits right into what we were just talking about. Who was the role model, your role model, that inspired you to be the success you became? Was there a role model?
It's a weird one, really. It's Danny Kaye.
Danny Kaye. Interesting.
Danny Kaye, because I didn't want to be Danny Kaye. I didn't want to, but the sign that he sent me, that he was good at everything. Interesting. He was
Ah,
like a good dad, and he had a good husband, and he had a lovely daughter, and all that stuff. and he was amazingly talented. And when I was a kid, it was Danny Kaye, and he was my family enjoyed him as well. When there was stuff going on that he was in, and then over the years, I met Anthony Newley, and he was another guy who was multifaceted in talent. He was a great bloke as well, and he was very interesting and difficult and odd but mass. So when I left Herman's Hermits, this explains everything really. So Danny Kaye. So I thought when I leave Herman's Hermits, I'm going to go after that career. I'm going to go on Broadway, and I'm going to, and I left Herman's Hermits. And when I got here, I realized I didn't have any talent. I couldn't dance, and I couldn't sing, and I couldn't do ballet, and I couldn't do anything except be Herman. So I set about it, and just like my grandfather learning to learn Italian in the corner when I was a kid, I thought, you got to do. So I joined. I was like, insane stuff. I joined a ballet class. I joined a drama. I joined an improv class. I was like in 5 classes a day in LA, and there are 5 classes a day. I joined 2 different improv things because I could steal something in one improv class and try it at another one. And they were all great people. It was all like famous people who became famous. And I was in that class, and I learned how to do things, and I got a bit of dancing down, which I now put into my show. Now I'm a bit old to be learning to dance, but the bits and pieces that I learned on the world during that year or 5 years, or actually 10 years before I got a job. And then I got the job by accident. It wasn't because I could dance or I could sing. It's because I had an English accent. I could do an English accent. Joseph Papp, the New York Shakespeare Festival, was looking for somebody, a tenor, who could do a British accent and could sing a bit. And I go, well, I'm not really a tenor. I'm a baritone, but I can high baritone, but I could, and I can't dance, but I can sing a bit. And I got the job.
That just reminded me. Can you do an American accent? What do we sound like?
I can only do, when I do it. It's sort of John Wayne, Harry, and and when I do it on stage, I do Johnny Cash, and it's nothing like Johnny Cash, but people believe because how you all doing, that kind of thing, and I think it's all a bit rawhide, rolling, keeping doggy rolling, and probably rock and roll voices I can do it with an American accent.
Yeah, people always say it's hard to do an American accent. I don't. It doesn't. Is it a difficult thing?
Well, I think you should ask Dick Van Dyke, because he can do a good American accent, but he's got a rotten English accent.
Yeah.
No one in England talks like that, but no one in America talks like when I talk American. You know what I mean? How y'all doing?
Nothing better. I want to hear you sing in with an English accent. How funny would that be if you did a version? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but that seems kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of what people think their accents sound like. Do you have any? What is a pet peeve of yours, just in general? What do you have? What do you got?
Only one pet peeve, and it's always been the same thing. I am 100% allergic to drunk women of any age.
Oh, really?
It's just
Really?
it's the one thing. I just don't like drunk women.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was one, so there was kind of, my mother was always running around hiding bottles of sherry and glugging and stuff like that. So, but I don't think it's not a good look for me.
Well, all right, let's move on from that one. Okay. What do you like to do? This is kind of funny in your case, but what do you like to do in your spare time? I never thought you had any spare time, but what do you like to do in your spare time?
I like to get busy in my spare time. I got a fan club, and it's amazing. My hobby is me. And what I do is every day when I get up, I put music on my computer, and it could be today, it could be ZZ Top Day, or it could be Pat Boone Day, or it could be West Side Story Day. And that's all that goes on all day in the background of me. And I've got a lovely wife and I've got a grandson and we fit everything in. And I booked my flight for tomorrow to Albany, New York. And I booked the hotel at the airport and I rented a car because, like Chuck Berry, I want control of all that. I don't want to end up in a hotel and say, oh, this is a dump. And that somebody else is responsible for. If it's a
What
dump and I
did
booked it,
Chuck Berry? Was that did that actually? I didn't know that.
Chuck Berry, yeah, he liked to rent a car when he landed at the airport and go to the rental car place and be a bit like O.J. Simpson, run up to the car and get a car and then drive off, and then because you can always escape. And in England, I was known as the king of the schmeitzers because sometimes I could come off stage and get in the car, my car, with the clothes that I'd worn on stage and leave before any. I'm not a big fan of that whole meet and greet world. So I realize it's an escape clause. If you've got your own car, you don't have to wait for anybody else. And people say, and I can stay in any hotel I want to, and if I don't like it, I can go downstairs and get in the car and leave.
Yeah.
And I can stop at Culver's or McDonald's, and at 2 a.m. in the morning, I can get a strawberry milkshake, and nobody will say, "Oh, that's really bad for you," because there's no one else in the car.
That is a great way. That is such a. It's almost like you're trapped because you're on a strict schedule with a lot of these shows. You have the show, and then if there is a meet and greet, do a meet and greet, and then there's
Yeah.
this. I totally agree. I think that's amazing. And plus, like you said, you're flying under the radar, so it's like you can just sneak out of there and do what you want, and don't have to worry about waiting for anybody to.
Yeah, I don't sneak out anymore because now I sell T-shirts and merchandise and souvenirs. So but at the end of that, when people are like counting the money and everything, I can run and get in my car and leave.
I love that. I love that so much.
And I don't carry too much stuff that I can get it in and out. This guy who works for me is really the keyboard player, but he can get he can read my mind a little bit. Like, are you ready? And Paul McCartney goes like this, and that means get everyone out of the room. But I just get kind of look like that, and he goes, okay, and he goes, packs the bag, and he's got the car door open and everything.
Yeah, you got your team that knows you.
Yeah.
You've you've been a musician for so many years. Has there ever been a thought of like, well, if this whole music thing, this whole entertainment thing doesn't work out, here's what I'm going to do. What would you be doing other than playing music?
I can't really do anything else. I can pretend that I'm smarter than I am. And you've noticed that every entertainer who did that failed miserably because once you start to pretend that you're more intelligent than we think you are. I mean, John Lennon did it. He had this wonderful career and he was pleasant and all you need is love. And then suddenly he thought, I'd like to impress other musicians and intellectuals. And then it all fizzles out. So I've never been there, but somehow, people admire my style, and that's all I've got. There's nothing else that I've never thought, oh, maybe I'll be a business manager or something like that, because there's a lot of people are better at that, but no one's better at being me than me. And so every time I see, it hasn't all been up and up and up. I mean, I remember I was 15 and I'm in a band and we make it and I'm in the charts. By 1972, we were an oldies but goodies band. You know what I mean? By the time I'm 25 years old, my career is over, and all I'm being offered then is the end of the pier for a summer season and a pantomime, and play some like Batley nightclub cabaret, pack up all your cares and whoa, here I go, sing it, that kind of stuff. And I'm not doing that. So I kind of retired and we went to, my wife is French, we went to live in the south of France and I was retired. But I was only retired for about 11 minutes because I was bored doing nothing. I'd walk around and I go, what am I doing? And So I made a record. Some guys had a record. It was called "We Don't Need the Money," which is kind of hilarious because we did need the money. But the record's called "We Don't Need the Money." We don't need the money. We've got love, and it becomes a big hit in France. So now suddenly I'm a French pop star doing interviews on the radio and everything, and everyone's saying to me, "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be doing this in America?" And my friend had this show called Midnight Special, and he came to stay in our house for a bit, and he goes, "What are you doing? You come to America. You've had this fantastic career. Surely you should be there, not in France or England, those little old-fashioned countries. Come to America." So I said, "Oh God, I can't afford just to move to America like that." And he goes, "Well, you can stay in my house. I have a house in Beverly Hills. You can stay in my house until you find a place." Well, you know, I got there. 2 days after I got to his house, I got a gig. We got our own apartment. And we started to go and do that 6 weeks in America, 6 weeks in France, 6 weeks in England, 6 weeks in France, like counting days. How many days can we stay here? How many days? Oh, I can't do that because eventually he said one day, let's go, let's just move full time to America and go when we want to on holiday in England and on holiday in France instead of living in all these different places. So we moved full time to America. And we were pretty desperate for about 10 years there while I learned how to do it, whatever it is. When people would ask me, you know, like, can you do this? And I go, no. Can you do an American accent? No. Oh, because we've got this great job, but you need to do American accents. I can't do American accent. This is the only accent I can do. I mean, I couldn't read a script with an American accent. I just couldn't do it because I think my whole thing is that I'm the English bloke.
Well,
He's the one with the accent.
You've done a great job of it. I will say that.
Yeah.
And for somebody who was worried about what they're going to be doing the next day, I've never seen anybody work so hard as you do and be busy as much as you've been in the last, I don't know how many years we're talking about now, but it's just incredible. So here, my next question fits into this in a way. It says, what's the one thing you would do over if you could? In my opinion, you've done so well. That would be a tough question to answer, but maybe there is something.
I think what I would have done, Don, is I would have known better how to behave in bad situations. Instead of running away from it, I didn't like confrontational stuff. So, you know, a little example of how I behaved because I was a kid. Like, we're in the studio and we're doing a Sam Cooke tribute. And the guitar player who's in the studio is Jimmy Page. And he knows the song. And he's going to teach me the song. I think I'm going to do Cupid. Mickey Mouse calls me. Eric Burdon is in the studio singing Bring It On Home to Me. Absolutely brilliantly. So I think, I want to do Cupid. You know, I can go, I can make that noise with my mouth. Cupid, Cupid. Stupid. And Mickey Mouse says, hey, Herman, don't know much about history? Yeah. What? Don't know much about biology? Yeah. That's who we're looking at you when we're saying that. That's your story. You get in there. It's more believable if you sing it than it was with Sam Cooke, who was 36 years old. You're 16, you know nothing about anything. I said, I don't know the song either. He said, well, Jimmy Page will teach it to you. So I'll go in the studio. Jimmy Page teaches me A Wonderful World. We record it, and then the Hermits find out, because it was like, I lived in London, they lived in Manchester. We wanted the record out that day, a tribute record. So they say, I said, well, no, it's out. Well, who's the guitar player said, like, well, what's that about? I said, well, he was there. I said, you know, and he's really, he may be better than you, but you'll be once we've done it a few times on the road, you'll play it. He was quick. I'm trying to like apologize for not having my own guitar player play on the record, who would have done just as good a job, but Jimmy was quick, and I handled it very badly, so that it turned them against me deep down inside. You know, when you know if you've got hate in your heart, you can hide it a lot of the time. And I probably did that a lot. and I probably didn't handle my parents as well as I could because I was too young. I had all this fame and fortune and major decision making at least 10 years before my brain was fully formed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You
Well, I
know?
think you've made some amazing decisions. Let's put it like you've made, we're also thankful that you've gone on the path you have to create such music and such just joy for so many people. We're just about out of timer, but
Okay.
I want to thank you so much and tell us where you're on tour and where everyone can find
Well,
you. And
I'm all over the place. I have no idea. I know I'm in Kingston tomorrow, Kingston, New York. Then I'm in Binghamton. Then I'm in Tampa, Clearwater, Florida. Then I'm going to take my wife for our wedding anniversary and my birthday to French Laundry in the Napa Valley and Auberge du Soleil. And then I go back on the road again. I got a Christmas tour, which is like 10 or 12, no, 15 or 20 Christmas shows all over the United States, up and down the United States. Never, my agent has a globe in his office, and he hires a blind monkey with a dart that throws, and that's how he books the tours. And so we're all over the place, but we kind of enjoy that. The musicians enjoy that as well because we're constantly in motion, and it's always kind of forward. And I always say, tonight we're going to do the best show we've ever done in our lives. Brian, I know you've got to finish it off, but I'm going to tell you, I met Don at Phil Ramone's house, and we argued. I thought that Pasadena by the Temperance Seven had been the #1 record in America. I was wrong.
that's where it started.
Yeah. He knew more about that period than me.
Oh God! Well, we're just so appreciative. Thank you so much, and
Hey,
we'll put your tour in the show notes and
great.
all your links and stuff like that. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. It's good seeing you guys. Take care. I'm
Yeah,
glad I finally
thanks a
got in
lot.
here.